Only a few steps separate from the dreams of these students. A little more, and they will finally meet with space. And let it be for now, through a telescope, but decades will pass and their meeting can take place live. Future astronauts, engineers and designers visit the Circle of Observational Astronomy at the schoolchildren's palace.
Ребята, мы находимся в обсерватории. Здесь телескоп, стационарный телескоп.
Guys, we are in the observatory. Here is a stationary telescope. The diameter of the telescope of the main mirror is 41 centimeters. It is inside. Here it is. Eyepiece. I put the eyepiece. You can watch planets through the eyepiece. At this moment in the evening, you can see the planet Venus. You can look through the eyepiece. Let's look, right here.
Смотреть вот сейчас через окуляр. Вот давайте смотрим вот сюда.
They no longer need to tell what the solar system looks like. They have studied dozens of encyclopedias, and now with their eyes closed, they can assemble its layout from improvised materials. Everything that they make is put together here in the audience. All works with a detailed description will be presented at a city competition dedicated to Cosmonautics Day. Another holiday in our calendar appeared due to the first manned flight into space. The year 1961 divided the history of its development into two periods, when a person only dreamed of stars, and since then, as a person conquered space. Almost 60 years ago, on April 12th, the Vostok spacecraft with a man on board flying around the globe returned safely to the Earth.
Дорогие друзья, близкие и незнакомые,
Dear friends, close and unfamiliar people, a few minutes later, a mighty spaceship will take me to the distant expanses of the universe. My whole life now seems to me to be one wonderful moment. Everything that has been lived, what has been done before, has been lived and done for the sake of this minute. Go. After 108 minutes of flight, the first astronaut in the world, Yuri Gagarin, successfully landed in the Saratov region, not far from the Engels. The whole world applauded him. Kazakhstanskaya Pravda then conveyed his words that the landing was normal. I feel good. I have no injuries and bruises. Our compatriots excitedly discussed the news. A whole poem was dedicated to the first manned flight into space by Olja Suleimanov, Earth Worship Man.
Мир, земля, шар земной, сочетание слов, сочетание народов, мечей и судеб. Сколько твердых копыт над тобой пронесло, все пустыни твои нас, безжалостных, судят. Черный и белый конь бросают черные тени. Кони атаки погонь в одной ярко-белой пене. Северный полюс земли, южный в одних снегах. Как разделить огонь, тени раскрасить как?
For a long time, mankind was divided into nations. People of different classes, faith, skin colors, people built borders, built walls. But on April 12th, Yuri Gagarin erased all obstacles. On this day, people felt like a single nation, the one that lives on planet Earth. This was written by a Kazakh poet. The first man who conquered space became an idol for everyone. They imitated him, tried to be like him, but he perfectly understood that this was only the beginning, start.
Я знаю, что вы все любите мечтать о космосе и немножко...
I know that you all love to dream about space and envy us a little, especially the boys. You know, we envy you too. We fly into space, but this is the beginning. You are waiting for planets and unknown worlds. You continue to storm the universe. Meirbek Moldabekov was 13 years old then. He was born in the Kizilorda region, not far from the place from which spacecraft soon began to launch.
Этот день, конечно, запомнился, таким был ярким, что он запомнился на всю жизнь.
This day, of course, was remembered. It was so bright that it was remembered for a lifetime. At that time, radio was everywhere in the Soviet Union, at all points of the Soviet Union. And so we were sitting at school in the classroom, and on the radio, which is on the street from the speaker, we heard "Attention, attention," says Moscow. Today, on April 12, 1961, man in space, etc. Citizen of the Soviet Union, Yuri Gagarin. There was such glee that everyone jumped down from the desks, from the seats. The teacher himself was in such a state of shock. and we all poured out into the corridor with such noise. It was such a crowd.
Учитель был вообще в таком состоянии шоковом, и всем с таким шумом высыпали все в коридор. Это было вообще такое столпотворение было.
From that day on, the fate of the Kizilorda teenager was decided. Like thousands of boys across the country, he began to dream of space. No, he did not dream of going to the stars. He wanted to construct spaceships.
Дело в том, что еще когда я учился в 4 классе, директор школы сказал, оказывается, моей маме.
The fact is that when I was still in the 4th grade, the headmaster said to my mother, "Your son will be an academician. Your son will be a scientist." And at that time, the word scientist, the word engineer sounded completely different. Everything that is created in the world is created by engineers. And the engineer sounded as something to be proud of. And therefore, during the period when the achievements of the Soviet Union in the nuclear industry were propagated, in the time of space industry, children dreamed of many astronauts, and I dreamed of being a design engineer, namely to design such spacecraft.
Именно конструировать вот такие космические аппараты.
Mirbek Moldabekov walked purposefully towards his dream. He graduated from school with a medal. He first entered the Kazakh Polytechnic, and then the Moscow Aviation Institute. He knew that to assemble ships capable of conquering space, it was necessary to master telemechanics and applied mathematics. He began with the basics, and after decades, he became a doctor of technical sciences. His dream came true. He worked on a number of space projects. What ordinary people know about space, in his words, is just the tip of the iceberg. The flights of astronauts, this is the apogee. The enormous work of scientists and engineers are behind it, including domestic ones, since all launches were then carried out from Kazakhstan land.
В космос откуда полетел? Полетел с космодрома Байконур. То есть это с того места, которое наш...
The first man from Earth to space, where did he fly from? He flew from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. That is the place that our Korkit Atta used to call the navel of the Earth, and that this place turned out to be that point on the geographical map, from where satellites and astronauts began to fly. And the Baikonur Cosmodrome is the first cosmodrome in the world. Therefore, we, as the owners of this cosmodrome, we are directly related to space activities. From this land, all cosmonauts started, spacecraft start up, and the land to which our spacecraft are returning. Why did Baikonur become the cradle of world space? The answer to this question can be found in the book of the first president Nursultan Nazarbayev, The Kazakhstan Way. Of the several dozen cosmodromes, Baikonur was recognized as the best in location. It is close enough to the equator. According to the laws of mechanics, less fuel is spent on launches here. But unlike cosmodromes located at the equator, there is almost no rainfall. The sun shines 300 days a year.
Да, здесь есть обоснование, исходя из законов физики, механики.
Yes, there is a justification here, based on the laws of physics, mechanics. The fact is that the Earth rotates and its rotation helps to take off rockets. And the highest rotation speed of the Earth at the equator. And therefore, the closer the rocket launch point to the equator, the more the Earth rotation takes off, and therefore less effort is required to launch the rocket. The first Kazakhstan astronaut went to the stars 30 years after the flight of Yuri Gagarin on October 2, 1991. Tokhtar Aubakirov at that time was 45 years old.
Этот полет вообще имел колоссальное значение для именно казахской части нашей республики. Почему? Потому что
This flight in general was of tremendous importance for the Kazakh part of our republic. Why? Because by the end of the 80s, the glory of the Baikonur Cosmodrome has already gone beyond the borders of the Soviet Union. The whole world knew about the Cosmodrome. It was already considered less a military test spaceport, and more was considered an international spaceport from which foreign citizens fly. It was a place of international cooperation. Everyone knew that. And among the Kazakh part of the population, the question arose, why this, the Baikonur Cosmodrome, should be on our Kazakh land? Is there really no place for a single Kazakh to fly? And here our Yelbase, at that time one of the leaders of Kazakhstan, found Tokhtar. By this moment, he was already a hero of the Soviet Union. He was an honored test pilot. He is one of the leading test pilots.
Он к этому моменту уже был героем Советского Союза. Это был заслуженный летчик-испытатель. Это один из самых ведущих летчиков-испытателей Советского Союза.
By that time, Tokhtar al-Bakirov had already twice appeared in the Guinness Book of Records. He was the first to fly non-stop to the North Pole region and lift the supersonic MiG-29 from the deck of the Tbilisi heavy aircraft carrier. He stayed in space for 7 days and 22 hours.
Он летал и как космонавт-исследователь, и в ходе своего полета выполнил первую научную...
He flew as an astronaut researcher, and during his flight, he completed the first scientific program of the Republic of Kazakhstan on space experiments. He conducted geophysical research there, physical and technical research. He monitored the Aral Sea there, in biotechnology terms, to create new varieties of plants under gravity in space, while there were environmental problems of the Aral Sea. His flight opened a new page in the science of Kazakhstan, namely in the development of space technologies and science.
Именно развитие космических технологий в науке.
3 years later, another compatriot, Talgat Musabayev, flew into space. He went to conquer the universe on the Soyuz ship. 3 flights, 341 days in orbit. Of these, 41 hours in outer space. Since childhood, from 3 years old, I dreamed of flying. And when Yuri Gagarin flew into space, I was 10 years old. And after that, I decided firmly that I would become an astronaut. And as you see, I fulfilled my dream. By the duration of flights, Talgat Musabayev is now in the top 10 world list. Thanks to him, in 1994, the de-energized Mir orbital station was saved from death.
Вот здесь, видите, кадры. Это вот из, снятые во время полетов Талгата Мангельдича в международном экипаже. Здесь как раз...
Here you can see the shooting taken during the flights of Talgat Amangildievich in the international crew. Here is just the international crew at the Mir station, and this is precisely the moment of landing. The president of our country meets Musabayev Talgat Amangildievich on Jeskazgan land. And this is the moment when the astronauts came out of the capsule, which landed. They still hadn't even come to their senses. They were put in a chair so that they came to their senses. And the president is talking to them.
Кстати, во время полета Мусабаева он возил в космос.
By the way, during Musabayev's flights, he carried the flag of Kazakhstan into space each time. He carried the Quran, he carried a tube of Kazakh lead, every time. And this flag with the stamp of the International Space Station Mir is being presented to our head of state. It was Talgat Musabayev who accompanied the flight of the first space tourist, Denis Tito, in April 2001.
Первые сутки полета назвали, значит,
The first day of the flight was called the first space babysitter, that is, the first space nanny. Yes, they called me that. Well, you saw everything. He flew away, I took him to myself.
На репортажах, иначе он же улетал, его я его к себе.
During this expedition, the astronauts conducted about a dozen experiments, and on May 6, they successfully returned to Earth.
Шли в автоматическом управляемом спуске, но для того, чтобы компенсировать этот перелет...
We walked in an automatic controlled descent, but in order to compensate for this flight, a huge flight, we had to bend the trajectory and thus increase the overload of exposure to the body. And we had an overload of more than 7.2. This is a very rare overload when landing on our ships. A few minutes later, you lie, but as if an elephant stood on you, it does not go away, and it is impossible to breathe. Sorry. In June 2003, Talgat Musabayev left the Cosmonaut Corps in connection with the transition to a new duty station. His experience was in demand everywhere. First, at the Zhukovsky Air Force Academy, and then at the joint Kazakh-Russian enterprise Bayterek, and later in the aerospace comedy, which was created under the Ministry of Education and Science of Kazakhstan. Soon, the comedy was transformed into the National Space Agency. Now Talgat Musabayev is a deputy of the Senate. In the parliamentary committee, he is involved in the discussion of bills related to international affairs, defense, and security.
Самочувствие у меня хорошее, адаптация прошла нормально. И, как говорится, здравствуйте и салам алейкум землянам и всем казахстанцам.
The flight of the third Kazakhstan astronaut took place in 2015. Its duration was 9 days and 20 hours. Aydin Aimbetov implemented the fifth space exploration program in Kazakhstan.
Полет Айдина Аймбетова это уже было продолжением тех полетов в
The flight of Aydin Aimbetov. This was already a continuation of those flights in terms of the continuation of those programs of space experiments. If Al-Bakirov conducted the first Kazakhstani space experiment program, Musabayev completed the second, third, fourth programs. Aydin continued these experiments and carried out the fifth Kazakhstani space experiment program. All these programs, subsequent programs, were a continuation of the first that Tokhtar began.
Мы водой напоили, правильно? Ну все! Александр Викторович! Амир, ты сюда, вот Амир.
The successful flight of Aydin Aimbetov was followed by a new stage in the development of the industry. An assembly and testing complex of spacecraft was created in the capital. An enterprise that uses high technology has no analogs in the CIS. Satellites are designed, assembled, and tested here. In 2014, the ground-based infrastructure of a high-precision satellite navigation system was formed. But the creation of space systems is not an aim. The main task is to provide modern services with their help.
То есть сейчас значит, много задач экономики решается с помощью снимков с космоса.
That is, now many problems of the economy are being solved using images from space. And especially emergency situations, spring floods, all operational shooting through space. Environmental problems, the storage of illegal garbage, it is determined through space. The illegal use of land through space. Deforestation through space. Environmental pollution through space. What is the state of crops? What is the expected harvest through space? This is done with the help of remote sensing satellites, which allows you to capture the territory of Kazakhstan at the right point, make a digital model of this area, and attach all types of activities to it.
Который позволяет отснимать территорию Казахстана в нужной точке, сделать цифровую модель этой местности и привязать к нему все виды деятельности.
By the way, much attention is paid to training. Future designers are taught not only in Kazakhstan universities, but also abroad due to the Bolashak program. The capital school student Aristanbab Abdikerim also dreams of a stellar profession. One of his research projects recently won first place at an international competition in Brazil. The project is about how to secure our missiles and missiles of other countries, make a hybrid, and at the same time create a wide variety of missiles, cheap and as safe as possible. By my profession, I am mainly inspired by Elon Musk, who creates various rockets and helps his country. And now I also want to create my own company and at the same time create my own rockets for Kazakhstan.
Я тоже так хочу создать свою компанию и при этом создать собственные ракеты для Казахстана.
Decades have passed since the first manned space flight, but people are still drawn to the stars. Therefore, it is very relevant that we have the Cosmonautics Day in our holiday calendar.